Please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ruchita from TIE Delhi. Welcome you all to this webinar on building your resilience. As the COVID-19 situation world over escalates and lockdowns across borders have brought our life as we know to a standstill, stress levels amongst all of us have become extremely high, and particularly so for founders. To overcome this, we all need to work on building our mental strength and resilience. I would like to invite and introduce Bhanu Chopra, who's the founder and chairman at RateGain, a leading SaaS player in travel and hospitality. Bhanu is a TIE Charter member and has also been profiled by a lot of organizations, amongst which YT is one of them. He actually has made it a habit of being insanely awesome. So over to you, Bhanu, for your views and a checklist on how we can all do that for ourselves.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ruchita. So first off, hope everyone and their respective loved ones are safe and well. These are probably one of the most challenging times to be an entrepreneur. It will test our nerves, and it's important to be resilient to get through these times. So my talk today is really, to figure out a way that once you sort of walk away from the session is to see if I can inject, a dose of positivity, something I call being insanely awesome. So whenever somebody asks me how I'm doing, my usual response to them is I'm doing insanely awesome. So my goal is, as part of the talk today, is to, really talk about, give you guys a peek into my entrepreneurial journey, the peaks and valleys that I've been through, because what we are going through right now is our very, very challenging times. So how do you manage your mindset in such times? Because when you embark on an entrepreneurial journey, it can really make you or break you. And I'll go through my own sort of resilience checklist so that you can all be insanely awesome. Really, the point is, how do you take steps on a daily basis so that you can control your mind? So let me first of all talk through, Ruchita, can you go to the next one? Let me first give you a peek into sort of my entrepreneurial journey and give you a little bit of my background. So I'm a Delhi boy, but I went to the US, got a double degree in finance and computer science. I started off my career with Deloitte Consulting, worked on large systems integration projects. Post that, I worked, this was around the 2000 .com days. I got adventurous, left that job, joined a startup. So got a first feeling of a startup scenario. Then I started my own company in the US with a colleague of mine. And post that, is when I founded RateGain. So I saw an opportunity because as I was a consultant, I was going around visiting client sites in different cities, and I was always looking for good deals. So the idea occurred to me is to build a price comparison website. So, RateGain really came about as a price comparison website initially. So I decided to pack my bags. I was in the US, decided to move back to India and put together a team, put together a consumer internet site, and very quickly realized that it was going to be hard to have an internet consumer site targeted to a US consumer sitting out of India. And at that time, right now the whole VC and private equity ecosystem is well established, but I didn't even know the spelling of venture capitalists at that point of time. So we pivoted the business model to being more B2B, where we would sell our technology to different players in the travel ecosystem for them to know what the competition was doing. And I really started off my journey. I came back, my father, he had, an apartment, a residential apartment in Haus Khas in Delhi. And that's where I started. And my first employee was actually, the chowkidar of that apartment. So, I was the programmer, the project manager, the sales guy. Really, it was very much a garage setup. And I would do programming all day, and at night, I would actually call on customers. And luckily, our first customer happened to be in Expedia. And I think that was a great anchor customer because it helped us, fine tune our MVP. And once we had such a large anchor customer, we were able to go and sell the product to different OTAs. And then eventually we tied up with another sort of travel technology company that focused on selling solutions to hotels. This was in the US, and that was another big break that we had because we were now tied up with a company that gave us access to 30,000 hotels. And that sort of gave us an entry into the hospitality space as well. And soon after, we started licensing this price comparison technology to car rental companies, and then eventually we entered into airlines. And so fast forward to today, every major OTA, Expedia, Booking, Make My Trip, Rakuten, all the regional leading OTAs are our customers. All the top 400 hotel chains are our customers. All the top car rental companies like Avis, Budget, Europcar, all the top cruise liners. So really, all the Fortune 500, travel and hospitality companies are our customers, and we provide not only price comparison. We sort of moved up the value chain. We provide now a full end-to-end platform that does intelligence, that makes recommendations on how you do this pricing, and then finally does the distribution of these pricing decisions across a multitude of online and offline partners. So today we have, as I mentioned, all the Fortune 500 companies. We have over 12,000 customers servicing across 150 countries. And we've gone through sort of our own peaks and valleys, and I'll give you a sense on, some of the, crisis times that I have been before. Next. So, so as I mentioned, each crisis or failure really teaches you something. And I have a very, very strong belief that you can use these crisis opportunities to really, to really think about, retrospect, and also come up with, convert them into really opportunities. So I'll give you a sense. So for instance, the 2001 9/11 crisis, very, very, similar in nature to what we are going through. There were, tons of job losses. I experienced a lot of my colleagues, getting let go in the company that I was working with. And that really had me ponder over and reevaluate the kind of opportunities. And that really gave birth to my first startup, which I started with a colleague of mine. So, although it was a crisis where my job was at stake, I was able to convert that into an opportunity. In 2011, this was, and this is with every entrepreneur, not only are you going to see professional setbacks, but you're going to see personal setbacks. This was a huge personal setback for me because I was very young, and it really set me back because I was the only son in the family. But again, having a very, very close support system helped me get out of this. And at the same time, in 2011, the company, obviously because of the personal setback, had issues, and we sort of had issues in the company as well, where one of our big OEM partners had deserted us. And up until that time, we depended a lot on our OEM partner to help us get the scale and to be really our sales and marketing channel. But again, we were able to convert that into an opportunity because we were forced to build our own sales and marketing engine. And today, I'm very, very proud, although we are a software product company targeted to the global community, I feel we are very, very strong on our sales and marketing machinery. And then in 2015, given the success we had, we raised some money, we had a private equity investor, we lost one of our big clients. And again, that we converted that also into an opportunity by creating an early warning system on our customers. So, we realized that we needed to have proper checks and balances. A true way to measure happiness of internal and external shareholders is NPS, and we launched the NPS. And it's become a very much an integral part of how we run RateGain. Given we've also put this as a separate function now in RateGain, we've got a tremendous amount of feedback on how we can improve things. And now, 2020, we are actually at the forefront of the storm because we provide software to travel and hospitality. And as most of you know, this industry is sort of impacted the most. The good news for us is that, we've seen our customers pause, but we have not had any cancellations. And it's been an opportunity for us to really re-engage with our customers and figure out ways on how we can help them and help them get through this phase. I see this as an opportunity because I feel that we are well positioned to get out of this phase, and we see a lot of consolidation coming in the industry. Some of our competitors are going to go away as it's going to be difficult for them to survive. And really very, very proud of the team and the culture that we have built over the years, because, this is the time the character of the team comes out, and very proud of the culture that we've built at RateGain. Next. Okay, so, as I mentioned in sort of my opening remarks, I think it's very, very critical as you go through this that you might manage your mindset. And because I think everybody looks up to the leader, looks up to the positivity of the leader and the vision and the plans that they have to get through this phase. And as I've gone through some of these crisis situations in the past, I focused a lot on reaching out to my network support system, also reading a lot of books. And I do want to mention about one of my favorite books of all times by Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset. And really, essentially what she says is she buckets people into, two buckets, either people having a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So I'm going to give you examples of how people with either growth mindset or fixed mindset, how do they react in different situations? And it's very, very applicable today. So, when we think about desire, a fixed mindset would want to look smart in every situation, look to prove themselves over and over again, where a growth mindset would take risks and look to learn from every situation. As entrepreneurs, we always carry the burden of looking almost like God, that we can't do any wrong and all our decisions are the best decisions and we can do nothing wrong. The desire to always look like the smartest guy in the room, really. And at this point, as we go through this situation, it is very, very important to be transparent, show our vulnerabilities, be almost like human-like, and try to build consensus on what are some of the decisions that you want to take on the business. So, as you reach out to your customers and employees, I think it's very important to be transparent with, the situation. I think everybody is very empathetic. I know a lot of us are facing, cash flows issues. There are multiple ways that you can tide over it, by having a very, very open and honest conversation with your customers. Another example, on how different mindsets deal with setbacks is a fixed mindset would deal with feedback with, having reactions like, I was destined to be a failure, I'm an idiot. Whereas growth mindset would react as, I failed, however, I would try harder in the next iteration. because I notice as a lot of us are going through this situation, there is a fighter in all of us that is coming out, and we're trying to pivot our businesses to find new ways of generating that cash flow, that revenue. And it's important as you go through these iterations to have the expectation that some of these iterations might fail. And, given the glory that we see a handful of startups has, it's easy to get, swayed by entrepreneurs to expect a similar fate for their own startups. However, being a successful entrepreneur in my mind is aspiring to be a top Bollywood star like Shah Rukh Khan. There are only a few that attain that glory through much hard work and falling down and getting up many times. So, I think it's very important we use this as an opportunity. And as you try, learn from each iteration, but continue to try, and success will be yours. Next. Okay, so as you sort of go about, dealing with the stresses of, of the job, of, keeping the company alive, I think one of the most important things is, as I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, is to nurture a support system. So I'll talk about, some of the things that I have done to sort of nurture my support system. But most important of them all is to, continue to say to myself that I'm insanely awesome. So I think there is a lot of merit in saying positive things, because it not only uplifts you, but it uplifts the recipient as well. So yes, my life is insanely awesome because I have made a choice to have a positive attitude as we go through this. And, as you embark on this entrepreneurial journey, you are going to go through peaks and valleys. And I call it not peaks and valleys, but I call it opportunities and better opportunities. And it's human tendency to second guess your decisions and ponder in retrospect. So, as I mentioned earlier, it is important to look at these situations and learn from them, and look at the positive opportunities that can come out of it. I'm also insanely awesome because I am resilient, a virtue very easy to preach, but very hard to practice, but is the only way out of challenging situations. I make my past a place of reference, not a place of residence. I learn from the mistakes of the past, but I don't live in them. As Maya Angelou famous quote resonates very, very well with me. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Yet another virtue that makes my life insanely awesome is the daily practice of gratitude. In these challenging times, it's important to look at all the successes, all the blessings that you have had. And I look at, all such blessings, and it keeps, it leaves me overwhelmed, be it my supportive family, extended family at RateGain, topping my high school, having been awarded scholarship in college, facilitated at the prestigious CNP Awards for the most promising entrepreneur, and many more. So one needs to look at things to comfort oneself in such times of distress. Other sort of fallback mechanisms is my fitness. I think it's paramount to my sanity, and my daily routine of exercising makes me, 10 times more constructive. It's a great way of getting those toxins out. And really the unconditional support system I've had at RateGain is also what makes my life insanely awesome. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. So it's so true. This is a time when key employees and key customers at RateGain have come together, and I'm super proud of our teams. And lastly, I'll talk about, the friendships that I have carried. I usually bucket them as two categories of friends. These are your comfort friends, your childhood friends. These are friends that you can be at complete ease with, who understand your pain and can empathize with you. this is the non-judgmental space that feeds my space. And then, it's the other bucket is what I call IQ friends, mentors, people in the industry. These are friends that, I can share the worldviews on, things that, bother me about our business. These stimulating friends allow me to grow as an individual, and sometimes it seems like a miracle that I can find solutions to, some of the biggest problems. So in a nutshell, I think these are some of the things that I do to inject positivity to get through these times. So I wanted to take this opportunity today to really think about how you manage your mindset versus talk about tactical things that we're doing. But now I'll open it up to Q&A for people to ask anything that they want to, that's top of mind.
Yes, thank you so much, Bhanu, for that. So folks, you can ask Q&A on the Q&A panel there. We've got some Q&A that's come in, and I have a couple of questions that I had for Bhanu. So I'll begin with that, and then we'll start taking up questions on the Q&A chat. So Bhanu, while you said that you are following a certain set of things to make yourself insanely awesome. As a founder, how do you really balance your priorities? At times like these, it's it's really chaotic. You have to. Most of us are working from home, and homes are also have become. We've invaded our homes essentially. So how are you maintaining that balance between the chaos at work and being at home all the time?
Yeah. And it's a good question. It's, it obviously requires some amount of discipline. And quite frankly, I am finding these times to be a lot more productive because I'm saving the time, on the commute time. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Just this last week, I have had almost 7 or 8 customer calls that are spread across geographically. And I was able to do that sitting, in the comfort of my house. Whereas, if I think about pre-COVID times, this would take me 2 or 3 weeks to accomplish because each of these customers is in different parts of the world. So I think it's a regimented routine where you allow some time in the morning or evening, for your fitness, and you allocate. I can promise you probably would have more time if you had like a disciplined calendar around it. I have it as buckets of time where I have the morning routine, I have the afternoon routine, and the evening routine. Morning routine is comprising of getting up in the morning, doing calls, because a lot of our operations are in the US. Then following my fitness regimen, and then in the afternoon allocating some time for creative and critical thinking, and then doing calls with my teams, and then evening time is spent with family and kids.
That's excellent. That's actually very disciplined. I am going to have to take some takeaways from that. You did mention that you have a network that you've sort of created for yourself. It's very lonely at the top. As a founder, you have to keep up face for your employees. You have to keep up face for your vendors. So it's extremely stressful. What have you done in particular to create that network and that, to get yourself that cushion to say that you're not going to flip out?
Yeah. So there are actually several sources that you can tap into. So, obviously one is your friends and family that you can depend on. And, you can look at, you can look at different people for different things. If there is, a sort of a business related item, whether it's sort of sales and marketing or, something related to finance, the first source would be obviously to tap into your sort of friends and family and their extended friends. The second source is obviously your industry, right? So, your customers, your industry friends, going after them. And, third is, organizations like TIE, right? There is TIE, there is NASSCOM. I think a lot of these organizations like TIE do a fantastic job in getting entrepreneurs mentoring. And, I think there are a lot of people available to help. And I can promise you, it's just really about reaching out. I have witnessed in my career, in most cases, as you begin to reach out, you won't have 100% success, but as you begin to reach out to people, you will find people agreeing to help.
That's excellent. I have one question here that says, while leaders are supposed to be a dealer at Move, how does one remain awesome when challenges like cash availability, canceled orders, non-payment of customers are staring at your face?
Yeah. No, I think, these are obviously unprecedented times, and I can imagine a lot of us are going through similar issues on cash flow and cancellations from customers. And as I was mentioning earlier, I think this is the time to sort of retrospect and pivot. All of us as founders have special skills. We are good at something, right? And what we have, for instance, done is started to engage, with our customers, and we're finding, because a lot of our customers are suffering as well, where, they've let go of teams, but there is still work to be done. So there are, pockets where you will find, opportunities which may not be, your traditional product or service, but they could be some consulting work. They could be a small project that you can do, obviously tied to your area of specialty. The question on cash flow management, I think, again, it requires some level of creativity and transparency. I have seen, customers be very, very empathetic because they realize, just like them, we are suffering as well. And, most of us obviously offer something of value to these customers, and it's important for them also to see us survive. So, you can get creative in terms of offering, a discount on whatever accounts receivable is due. You can also get creative by breaking the payments that are due to you into sort of installments over the next sort of few months. So those are some of the things that we've tried.
Great. Follow-up question to this. In this environment, how do you communicate bad news like salary cuts, layoffs, without impacting confidence of employees, impacting motivation, especially for a small company? This is obviously more true because we might not necessarily be able to pay beyond a particular time frame in the current environment.
Yeah. This is obviously a difficult thing to do, but one of the things that I would highly recommend to everybody who's on the call today is to, double or triple up the level of communication that you do. That's first and foremost. So if you were doing, let's say once a month, you're now doing once a week communication. And as I was indicating earlier, it is very, very important to be open and transparent on what the company is going through, giving as many details as you can possibly do about, the situation of the company in terms of revenues, cash flows. Because look, it's not you alone, it's the whole world that's going through this. And as difficult as it is for people to understand, they will understand as long as you are open and transparent with them. So I think first and foremost is communication, and I think second is the intent that you sort of demonstrate as people go through this process in terms of, you know, engagement programs that you can do? I mean, can you utilize this time for getting people trained, right? In the case of, uh, situations where you're laying off people, are there opportunities for you to network with your other startup founders and find opportunities for these people? Although that's going to be hard, but I think uh, people need to see that you are transparent, A, and B, in your heart, you want to really do good for them, and you want to find them an opportunity, and you want to find them, you know, areas where they can explore, finding something. So I think, those are the opportunities that I would look at.
I have another question here from Vipul, who's asking, how do you think SMBs will overcome these unprecedented and challenging times with zero revenue, cash flow crunch, labor shortages, linkages problem?
Yeah. History has shown us that times like this actually bring out the best in the best of the entrepreneurs. If you look at, the last crisis that happened, which was in 2008, there were lots of amazing startup companies that are icons of today that came about, and similar was the case in 2001 as well. So, I'm a firm believer that, people who are in a situation where they're faced with sort of zero revenue is the time they need to think about pivoting their business. And as you sort of go through that, some amazing ideas will emerge. I also wanted to share with the group here that the natural inclination that I've been hearing by attending other webinars is that the funding community or the VC community, it has completely dried up. I do not believe that is true. There is a lot of dry powder that's sitting out there. Obviously, people are conscious and cautious about the situation. But for the right idea, this is, people are seeing this as a tremendous opportunity to invest in. I mean, we're noticing that at RateGain, the number of incoming calls that we have, investors showing interest is unprecedented because they believe, that the next emerging stars will really come out of this period. So I think, everybody needs to sort of, accelerate on those creative juices and figure out newer ways of functioning.
Insanely awesome. So we have another question here, and I think it's further to what you've just said. How do you keep yourself motivated and manage time to develop yourself? Because obviously work from home has increased our office commitments and it has sort of invaded our homes. This is a question from Kritika from Amity.
Yeah. So actually, a lot of what I had in my opening remarks in my initial talk really talked about how do I keep myself motivated, things like, first of all, saying positive things. I mean, I'm a big believer of the universe, listening and throwing back on the words that, come out of your mouth. So the first and foremost thing that I practice is just saying positive things. And that's why I've stuck on to insanely awesome, because it uplifts me and it uplifts the recipient as well. And, it's funny, but just having that positive aura, accelerates your, creative thinking and enables you to find solutions to the most difficult problems. And the second point is, as I was alluding to earlier, is being very, very regimented and disciplined about how you run your day, is not very different as when you're in office and you have, you know, and how you manage your calendar. You're just extending that now to your home office and managing your calendar in sort of a similar fashion where you're, slotting different points, different hours for different levels of activity. And as much as possible, try to have the same slots as you would in if you were going to office. So if your office was 9 to 6, I would continue to allocate that time to work related activity, and then anything outside of that, is for, your personal as well as other family commitments.
Okay, here's an interesting one. What is your advice to insanely awesome travel startup founders who've just launched in the last 1 year and are finding it difficult to raise bridge funds? How do we crack the angel funds, and where do we find the angels? This is an interesting one, Bhanu, particularly because I know that for the longest time ever, you were bootstrapped. So I think this will be a good one for you to answer.
Thanks for bringing that up, Ruchita. So, that's an important point I wanted to convey as well as part of our session today, that I think a lot of entrepreneurs put too much value to being, to being funded. I think this is a great time to actually be bootstrapped, because if you think about it, the number of job losses that we are seeing, and the job market, as everybody can acknowledge, is not very hard. It's very, very easy to actually find people on sort of a part-time basis and really bootstrap a company. And I think, bootstrapping a company gives entrepreneurs early on education on how to be fiscally disciplined about how they run the show, which is very, very useful as you scale the company. So, so two pieces of advice here. One, as much as possible, especially if you're a travel startup, as much as possible, try to see whatever you can do, with the friends and family around, and how much you can sort of continue to bootstrap it. Because, ultimately when you go out and raise money, investors, potential investors, and even angel investors look at how much of your skin is in the game, right? So if they have seen that you have put in not only time and energy, but also your own funds to bring up the company, you definitely are seen in a positive light. The second, like I said, earlier as well, I think it's definitely harder. It's harder to raise money from angels as well as the VC community. But I do feel that if there is a powerful idea, and you can show compelling value, it's not completely dried up. It's obviously a lot more effort. So let's say pre-COVID, if you were allocating, X amount of hours to this activity, you now need to allocate maybe 3x to get, to the same outcome.
Okay, here's a question, follow-on question to a question that you responded to earlier. How do we ensure productivity and time-based output from different team members working from home first time? Do you have a set matrix to ensure the same? We are using Asana to ensure coordination amongst tasks. This is a question from Harish Ahuja.
Yeah, no, this is a great question, because I have seen this come up as an item of discussion between different entrepreneurs as well, that how do you actually monitor and manage the productivity of your teams? And my answer to that is that, you need to actually be very, very clear on the metrics. I think it's important to demonstrate trust within the organization, and getting people to track their hours or do screen time measuring. I don't think it's effective in a way it sort of dilutes and diminishes the trust in the organization. I would, if you don't already have key metrics and KPIs on how you manage the organization, it'd be a good time to, set those metrics up. So I think net, what I'm saying is have a set of metrics that measure the output versus the input. And I strongly believe that there is going to be a new normal that's going to emerge, after this is all over, where a lot of us would actually be working from home. And how do you, ensure that people are all aligned? I think it's by setting up goals and targets and then converting it into measurable metrics.
Sorry. So here's another one. It's specific to this, to how do startups who have just recently launched a SaaS products survive with no revenue and no funding? I think this is a very, very specific question on SaaS products, so I thought you might want to take that up.
Yeah, no, I think I answered this question, Ruchita, earlier as well. I think there was a similar question on, how do you manage if you're a startup in terms of raising funds? And I said, as I said earlier as well, I think it's important to go to your bootstrapping ways. And my sense is the cost of running a startup at this point will be significantly lower than it was, pre-COVID, because, your teams are working from home. So there goes your cost related to office. And I also feel that there will be a lot of talent available that will be willing to, sort of do focus part-time freelance work on certain of your projects. So I think ultimately there will be a need to sort of depend on, your own funds and bootstrapping it. And in terms of reaching out to angel investors, I think it's also important, this is a point that you brought up earlier, when you reach out to you angel investors, it's important at this point, because I'm an angel investor and I'm inundated with proposals as well. If you can get somebody to recommend you to a potential VC or an angel investor, it just, helps you get ahead of the line in terms of your ability to pitch to them.
Here's another one. Can you name few KPIs that you would track more post-COVID? And the second question on that, what's your take on travel and how must travel operators look and plan for the future? And I think there is a follow-on question to this, which actually said, what do you think, what's your take on the impact of COVID-19 on travel, both globally and in India? And will the impact, how long do you think the impact is going to be? How much the impact is going to be? Will it be moderate or brutal?
Okay, so let me, I think there was multiple questions there. I think the first question was, what kind of metrics should you measure? So, what we do at RateGain is, we have two kinds of metrics. We call them leading indicators and lagging indicators. So to give you a sense, renewal rate, which is very popular, renewal rate or churn, is a metric that SaaS companies measure very well. And that to us is a lagging indicator. The leading indicator to renewal rates for us is NPS. So if the NPS is good, your renewal rates will be good, because fundamentally what you're saying is that, your customers are happy with you, and then there is a much higher likelihood of them renewing with you. Under the sales, there's a bunch of metrics. So you have, your sales targets, and we, backtrack from there and talk about, the number of conversations that you need to have to create a certain level of pipeline and then we monitor what is the win ratio to see how much we will eventually convert. So, it's a very good sort of scientific way of starting with like a set target and then breaking it up into, for that target to be achieved, what kind of pipeline do you need to have, with the win ratio that you have, and then to have that pipeline, how many conversations you need to have. So, those are examples on the sales side. And then on the, so you can basically take every function and set up what is the output desired, and basis on that output desired, have a metric around that, and then look at what are the inputs that lead to that output and have metrics around that as well. And I think, Rucha, the next question you asked me is about sort of overall travel industry. Uh, what is my view on how it's pretty brutal with 95% of the airlines, have grounded their fleet. Almost 95% of the hotels around the world are closed. And even the ones that are open are operating in a very, very limited capacity. My sense is that we've already found the bottom. So the good news is that things will only get better from here. It can't go worse. The question on how long will it take for it to come back, I think that's anyone's guess. My sense is that, two things are going to happen. I don't think the whole lockdown situation is, something that's sustainable. Eventually, economies have to, open up. Commerce has to return. So there will be, I think, relaxation on the lockdown in due course. And, we will learn to live with the virus, whether it's through better tracking, containment zones, etc. But I think for it to return fully back to where it was, I think there is some sort of a, medicine intervention required, in the sense that maybe an antiviral needs to work, or there needs to be a vaccine that comes out, and I think that's some time away. So for people to develop that comfort to go about their life the way they used to pre-COVID, I think that's that's far away. But I have a very, very strong belief that, and this is what I say internally, by December 2021, I feel that travel will actually exceed the levels that we were pre-COVID. Because, just to give you an example, when I do my inductions in the office, when we welcome our new batch of employees at RateGain, and it's an interactive session, and one of the things I ask them is, what is one of their favorite things to do? 9 out of 10 times people say, they want to travel. So I think it's now become a must have. It's a human need for us to go out and explore and experience the world. So I'm very confident that it might take long. We've hit a pause button, but it will come back with a vengeance whenever it does.
There's a very, a targeted question at RateGain. As a funder and a CMD yourself, how do you think vendors and partners like us can support you further? This is from Amit at Rapido.
Oh yeah, hi Amit. Yeah, Amit, we should talk offline, but can you give us a discount and also allow delayed payments? I think that would be great.
So I'm going to take up on this follow-on question that had come in terms of for how long should these discounts be given, and how should one prepare to come out of this discount mindset?
Yeah.
That's from Anish.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's an very, very, look, whenever we are having these conversations with partners, customers, vendors, I think as an industry, I think it's an opportunity for all of us to empathize with the position that each one of us are in. So, for instance, I was talking to a lawyer friend, and they're faced with the same challenge of paying office rentals as all of us are, even though we're in a lockdown situation. And the decision that they made, because they're impacted but not as impacted, is to continue to make those rental payments despite the lockdown. So I thought that's very thoughtful, and I think that most people, I'm hoping, would react in a similar manner. Is depending on the situation you are in, and it depends on how much you can afford to do. There is a humane element that we need to all exercise as we go through this, rather than use it as an opportunity to capitalize on the position that we are in. So if you're in a position of strength and you use it to capitalize on it, I think it'll ultimately come back and hurt you. And I'm seeing that happen. So it was nice of Amit to offer that, because I'm seeing that happen with, some few sectors, especially, around hosting, um, and anyone who sort of enables cloud and digital, because they're in an area of strength, because there is, the demand is off the roof, right? And they're using this as an opportunity to escalate prices versus decrease prices. And I think, customers like us and the industry in general notices these things. I think this is the time where you empathize and you get closer to your customers and you help them as much as you can. Because I promise you, the rapport that you build, the currency of, the relationship currency that you build will ultimately come back and pay you huge dividends.
That's actually an excellent thought. I think to have a heart in your business is essentially what you're saying, both with your vendors as well as your teams. There is a question that says, this is the time to course correct. So for entrepreneurs and founders, so employees, of course, would be upskilling and be working on what more they can learn. But how do startup founders course correct, and what is it that they should look at and use this time? How can they use this time to course correct?
Yeah. So I think first of all, most important is to look at your strategy. As entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to jump into many things. And this is the time to sort of focus on, what's important and what's not, what's a must have versus what is something that you can live without. So my big recommendation would be to be laser sharp and very focused on a few items and doing them really, really well, versus, spreading yourself thin, because all of us are also very challenged in terms of resources that are available to us. So I think you have to pick your winners and cut your losses, and maybe do away, letting go of some product lines, something similar that we are doing at RateGain as well. The other thing that you can look at is strategically, what markets, what customer segments make better sense, and doubling down on those customer segments again, versus being, across all areas. From a cash perspective, re-looking at all your expenses, as we sort of go through this, round of optimizing on our expenses, I think a lot of us would realize a lot of those expenses, we can do without. And it is very, very important, because none of us know how long this is going to last. And I think it's very important, as much as possible, permanently think about, disciplining your business in terms of, the cost that you have. And I think on the people side, it's absolutely important. I mean, these are difficult times and difficult choices to be made. And, most of us will have to do something around our people. And so our philosophy has been, you know, let's just take care of people that we'll have and take extra care of them, you know, our A players, and, you know, double down on them, and, you know, make sure that, you know, we have plans for them to be rewarded as we sort of get through this. And at the same time, you know, as I was alluding to earlier, people who are being let go, being humane about it and helping them, you know, with outplacement agencies and helping them sort of staff out elsewhere through your friends and family network.
Okay, here's one which I think is going to help a lot of startup founders here. As an entrepreneur, what has been the biggest and toughest decision that you made in business?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think the toughest decisions are when you're in a bit of crisis, and, you know, you have a tendency, I mean, a part of you, not, I shouldn't say tendency, there is a part of you, or there's an inclination to say, you know, maybe this is too hard and to give up, right? So, I mean, have been through a bunch of crises now, so I feel fairly confident that we'll come, you know, get through this. But as I was going through my presentation earlier, there was a time in 2011 where I had a personal setback as well as coupled with setback in business. And we were offered, um, you know, because we had great technology, we were offered to be bought over by this American company. And I think that was a big decision. You know, there was a part of me to say, you know, this might be the road ahead seems like a big uphill battle. So it might be an easier way out to cash out now. But, you know, but we decided to sort of stay the course, and, you know, here we are, you know, one of the biggest players in travel and hospitality tech.
Thanks, Banu. That really helps. You know, I'll bring you back to the conversation we were actually wanting to have. What are the 5 top tips to be insanely awesome?
Yeah, I think I talked about that, you know, in
In your presentation, but
my
I think it's,
presentation also, but I will go through it again.
yes.
I would say, you know, it all starts with positive attitude. You know, please begin your day by saying positive things. As hard as it is, uh, you know, as much as possible, you can say it's hard, but you cannot say we're gonna die, we're gonna run out of cash. It's very important to continue to say positive things as you go about this. Uh, the second tip is we need to be patient. These are testing times. This is going to take a while for us to come out of. And as you go and try different things and different iterations, maybe you pivot your business, some ideas will work and some will not. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And as you look to pivot, don't get disappointed. Idea is to think big, but act small and measure. So if you have a big idea on how you can pivot, you know, take small steps and measure the success of it before you sort of bet the house on it. The third tip is to be, you know, resilient. Um, Look at, you know, look at the accomplishments you have had in your life, learn from them, be happy about them. You know, there are people who are in a much worse off situation than we guys are, and we should look to count our blessings. And, you know, fourth is gratitude. Fifth, I think I talked about, you know, I am a big believer of, you know, fitness, having some sort of a fitness regimen into your daily routine. And lastly, I would say have a, you know, awesome support system at home and with your friends.
Okay, I think we'll take this last one. How do we reach out to you for suggestions and help? How do we startups reach out to you for guidance in these trying hours?
Yeah.
And how can we connect with Bhanu Chopra?
Okay, so I'll just say out my email. Please, you can email me, and you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. My email is my first name initial, last name Chopra, CHOPRA @redgate.com. And Ruchita, if you can maybe even, if there is a way for you to broadcast it, you can go ahead and do it too.
Yes, I'll do that. And this is available on recording on our website. You can write into us at info@TiE New Delhi. Thank you so much, Bhanu. It's been an excellent 1 hour. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions that have been left unanswered. People can write into us or to you directly. bchopra@redgate.com. Thank you so much, Bhanu. Thanks everyone for staying with us here.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you all on a lot of other stuff that we are putting out for you. You can actually visit our website on delhi.tie.org to see the other webinars that we have planned for you. Thank you so much, Bhanu.
Thank you.